So it's a big event, this auction. I mean, these 11 works dedicated to Yayoi Kusama, right?
Absolutely. It is the finest collection of works by Kusama ever to appear at auction. So the fact that we have it is very exciting. The collection, so there's 3 paintings and 8 works on paper, as you say, all from the same collection and all gifted by the artist to the father of the present owner, Dr. Teruo Hirose, during the 1960s. So as a way of telling the story of the artist's early career, there really is no better evocation, certainly that I've seen. And also, it comprises many of her most recognizable themes as well. So it's really a thrilling body of work.
And when did the doctor died?
He died in 2009, I believe. Sorry, I've just so many dates in my mind that I've. Yes, I think it's 2009. I'll double check and I'll confirm that with you.
Okay, and the 3 paintings. What can we tell about them?
So 2 of the paintings are known as river paintings. So we've got Hudson River and the Mississippi River. And the river as a theme was very important to her at the time. Kusama has become well known for engaging with her own mental health problems. But these really started to come about at the end of her childhood in Japan in the early 1950s. And she was in a semi-aristocratic family, not a happy childhood. But where she found solace was there was a river behind her house growing up. So the river, the passage of water as a kind of meditative thing was very important to her. So she started working on these rivers in 1960. Both of these come from 1960. And so they're a very interesting synthesis between her life in Japan and also her life in America. These are specifically the Hudson River and the Mississippi River that she had seen.
And the third work. What about the third painting?
Exactly. So the third work is from 1965. That's the latest work in this series. It's much larger. It's called Untitled. But what it shows there is really the concentric squares, the explorations in color. And you can see quite a lot of influence from the minimalists. You never consider Kusama to be a minimalist, but she was very close with artists like Donald Judd, Joseph Albers. So the homage to the square in Joseph Albers' work is very reminiscent of the larger painting Untitled from 1965. And also in that work, as well as the rivers, but particularly in 1965, you can see the infinity net, that technique of repetitive, meditative circles and circles within the pictorial frame. You can see that really maturing and becoming her most dominant theme throughout her career.
And what about the estimate?
So the estimates are $3.5 million to $5.5 million for the 2 river paintings, and then the Untitled is at $2.5 to $3.5 million.
What about the drawings?
So the drawings are fascinating. You know, Kusama has always been someone who created a lot of work. But in this period during the 1950s, all of the drawings came with her in her suitcase from Japan to America. She came to America in
2,000 work, I read.
Well, it could be as many as 2,000 works. Certainly, she destroyed many of the works that she made, but she came with the direct intention of using these works as currency. She had no money, so her suitcase was filled with kimonos and artworks on paper, and so she brought them to barter with. So she went up to basically Harlem, where there was a very established Japanese community, expatriate community, and where she knew that she would be able to get be able to barter using these artworks. It was relatively common at the time. It still is, of course. So in fact, she would barter with Dr. Hirose for his medical attention. He was a very famous, very well-established thoracic and cardio surgeon, but he gave her medical treatment and accepted artworks in terms of payment. And also that foundation was on that foundation was built a long-lasting friendship that continued to his death.
And so what can you say about the drawings? They are a bit
so
different.
the drawings, absolutely. I mean, they really are engaging with some of her her hallucinogenic experiences. So when we look at Kusama's works, there are very important tropes. So the infinity net, of course, we've talked about, the polka dot, and also seeds and flowers. So flowers and seeds. Her family was merchants in seeds in Japan. So obviously it's very important to her. But flowers, the germinating of flowers, her first hallucination was of a flower emerging in front of her. So again, that's very central to her psyche. And in addition to that, she was a very sexually experimental individual, particularly during these, she came from an incredibly patrician, formal Japan into New York in the 1960s. So that kind of explosion of sexuality is mirrored in the use of the flower and the seed. But she was very influenced by Georgia O'Keeffe and her paintings of flowers and rivers as well. So there's a hugely important link between Kusama and O'Keeffe. And so the flower and the seed comes as part of that. So what we see in the works on paper are the experimentations with these ideas of seeds, flowers, polka dots, the lights that later she started to make installations out of.
Yeah, but you said she was influenced by Georgia O'Keeffe, but in fact she did all that in Japan, which means probably she has not yet seen any Georgia O'Keeffe, right?
It's possible. I think she was likely to have seen some Western work, but the seed is absolutely central to her, and that's where these works and that's where they come from. But what you see is the development. It's almost a kind of a circle of life development in her artistic career. When she comes to America, these elements mature, so the seeds become flowers, and that transition is triggered in large part by experiencing Western art, by looking at Georgia O'Keeffe. So that kind of the conversion of her ideas into the more fully formed ideas that we know her for from the 1960s is both inherent to her, but also to the influences that she's absorbed.
And so what about the estimate for the drawings?
Well, the drawings are very conservatively estimated, I would say. As an auction house specialist, I would always say that, of course. But,
Bravo!
So, exactly. But, certainly with reference to recent market comparables, these are very conservatively priced, is the expression we'd use. Because their freshness.
So what is the range of prices?
So the works on paper range from the least expensive is $20,000 through there's ones at $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 is the highest.
And what's the general estimate of the collection?
So the total low estimate is $8.88 million US. So a very propitious 888 in Asian circles. That's completely by accident, but it's rather interesting.
And does the family keep some work?
That's not something that I'm allowed to mention. So
okay.
They've asked for complete discretion. So we have to leave them out of it.
Okay. And what would you say about the market of Kusama in general?
The market is as robust as any artist in the world. She is the preeminent living female artist from a market perspective, certainly. She's probably the most visible of the great artists, living artists in museums internationally. And so what we have seen is that her interest in her work is truly global. And there's not many artists where their work is instantly recognizable, but also appeals to a kind of international sensibility. What you don't have with Kusama is there's nothing that is overtly political, nothing that is overtly sexual, certainly these days. And therefore, these are works that can be appreciated across social barriers as well as they're not text-based. Social and linguistic barriers, they're easy to own. So really, she is the ideal artist for someone building a collection who wants to look at the way that Western art has assimilated Eastern traditions through the 20th century and beyond, and for whom she has been sufficiently prolific to service that global interest. It's all very well an artist being massively appreciated, but if they haven't produced enough work, they don't, the artworks don't have that kind of currency to them. So she really has all of those signifiers of kind of real resilience and attractiveness to buyers.
But don't you think there's a double speed in terms of production? There's the old work, which are deep, etc. And in recent years, she produced a lot of flashy work in bright colors. I mean, a bit kitsch.
Well, I think, there's room for both of those styles. And I recognize what you're saying, absolutely. The emphasis amongst collectors is on the earlier works, as is so often the case. Not immature works, but the works when the artist is really, really grappling with the themes that would define their careers. So with Kusama, that is late 1950s through to the mid 1970s when she moves back to Japan. But then, of course, there is those works are expensive and are in very high demand. And also there are some collectors who like an artist's work when it is more sophisticated in terms of the execution and the materials used. Kusama in this period had no money, so she's using very rough, raw canvas. And actually the condition is amazing of these pieces. But a lot of artists, their early works, they didn't have any money and they didn't have any resources to secure materials. So they used whatever they could. So a lot of early works by artists are deteriorate and are hard to come by, whereas the later works are pristine and easy to own. So there are two speeds. I agree with you on that, but I think there is breadth in the market to accommodate both. But certainly the most interesting part from an auction house's perspective, and I would say from major collectors' perspective, is this sweet spot, late 50s to mid 1970s.
Okay, merci beaucoup.
Par mon plaisir.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
No problem at all. And if you need anything else, let me know.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.